Good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait from Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us. Happy to have as a guest today Bridget Higdon, the managing editor of the Saint Albans Messenger. Bridget, great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
And thanks. We've grabbed you before on election night, town meeting night coverage. First time we've got you at another time, but appreciate the time. I know you're a very busy person.
Yeah, sure thing.
And again, I trust folks, at least some of the folks out there have seen us on our election night coverage. And I think we've gotten into it a little bit, but again, give us a little background on yourself. You certainly, as a guy who's been involved in local journalism for about half a century around here, not to put pressure on you, but you're a key person around here, and I think you've done a great job. And nice to see Emerson Lynn the other night. We'll talk about the Public Safety Forum, but give us a little background on yourself.
Sure thing, yeah. So I have been at the Messenger now for 4 years.
Wow, 4 years.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yep. I started as a reporter and then moved into the editor role 3 years ago. I went to UVM and studied English there.
And as I recall, editor of the Cynic also?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. Editor-in-chief of the student newspaper there my senior year. Had sort of come from like an arts and culture writing background, and that was what I really loved. And then the editor-in-chief position came up there, and I was, really intrigued by that. And so that gave me so many of the leadership skills and the news writing ability that I've got today. And then, I was hired at the Messenger in June 2020. So really,
Yeah, boy, 4 years, huh?
Yeah. So really, in the middle of the pandemic in those early days, and so came up here. And my first couple weeks on the job were very strange in terms of doing all phone interviews and Zoom calls, and it was hard to get out.
After graduating from UVM, or was that?
It was
really?
right. I started just like the week after.
Wow.
And so, yes, now it's 4 years later. Here I am as editor, and I've got a great team with me at the paper right now.
In fact, you just hired another staff reporter, did you not?
Yes. Aiden Schoenborn just joined us.
Interesting.
He graduated from Northern Arizona University
and
moved out here.
In Flagstaff, I think?
Yes.
I've never been to Flagstaff. It sounds like a very cool place.
Yes.
Even some winter and snow up there.
Exactly, yep. So he's not foreign to the snow and the cold that we'll have here.
And maybe another time we'll grab Josh Ellerbrock,
Yes.
And Josh has been on board for a while now.
Yes, he's also going to come up on about 4 years this year, or 3, excuse me.
So when you started with the Messenger, was it a daily paper then, or had you gone down? Was it still a daily?
It was 5 days at that point.
5 days at that point.
Yep. So I have seen it through various transitions in the last couple of years, but I think it's in a strong place right now.
Yeah, because I know and Emerson Lynn was good enough to let me throw some words together for a bunch of years as a columnist. But
sure.
I know when you went down to 2 days a week, I think myself and I'm sure a few other folks are thinking, how long are they going to hang in with 2? But you're hanging in with 2 days a week.
We are. Yep, hanging in very strong. Yeah,
the
subscribers are consistent, and the online readership is just growing monthly, which is awesome to see.
How are you doing with folks like me who still love to grab a paper in my hands? Is that fairly stable, or does that always go down a bit?
It's stable for the moment, which is great in terms of the print subscribers, and then also people who are picking it up at the store. But we just did a great reader survey at the paper.
I did take note of that.
Yeah, this spring we had over 200 people respond. We had an online survey that folks could fill out, or they could fill out a paper version.
Yeah.
We asked some basic demographic questions about how old are you and what town do you live in, but then also wanted to hear more from folks about what topics they want to see covered in the paper. What do they want to see more of? What do they like that we're doing? What could be improved?
What were some of the highlights, the obvious points that came out of that?
Yeah, I was just really impressed with the number of feedback, like 200, over 200 responses was really,
that sounds pretty
really
good.
Exciting to see, because the last survey we did was about, came just before I came on board, so almost 4 years ago, and only 60 people responded at that time, so it was really great to see more engagement. But some takeaways would certainly be that people are looking for more coverage of state and local government, which I think is, of course, key because it's an election year.
Sure.
But also something that the Messenger, we really tried to stay local for a period of time. And, it's hard to cover the state legislature and everything that's going on there.
Yeah.
But if people want to see it, then we're going to try to give it to them the best they can. Also, people are really valuing our like local event coverage and the calendar that we've been publishing of events, which is great to see.
Love it. That's very useful.
Yeah, absolutely. The page 2 of the print paper is full of calendar items, and people can send those in, and we'll include them as they roll in. And then also more people talking about wanting to see coverage of arts and recreation, and that's something that I feel like I've brought to the paper, is that sort of lens and that interest, and so that people are seeing that and utilizing it and want more of it is pretty gratifying.
And you have significant other responsibilities besides the Saint Albans Messenger too. You've got 3?
Correct. Yes.
3 all still online. Has anybody gone back to paper?
Yes. So we have the Essex Reporter, the Milton Independent, and the Colchester Sun.
Yeah.
The Essex Reporter is back in print.
Really?
It's a monthly paper. Comes out the first Friday of the month. That's direct mailed to all residences in Essex,
Really? Wow.
the city and the town. And so that came back in September. So it's been over 6 months now, and that's going really strong. Jackie DiBartolomeo is our reporter down there, and she's doing a wonderful job. But Milton and Colchester are still online only.
Any chance? I used to read the Milton Independent.
Yeah, we're working on Milton is coming back next. We're going to do all 3. We're just doing them in phases. So Milton's coming back first. It'll be the same format as Essex with that monthly paper.
You're obviously helped by the Free Press, which is just, and again, I wrote for the Free Press, and they treated me very well for about 20 years. I still get it. I guess old habits are hard to break, but it's kind of mind-blowing to me. Talk about paling by comparing. And that they don't even deal with Burlington stuff. It's not like nothing going on in Burlington, of course. I'm kidding. Anyway, so I guess that probably helps you. The Free Press, just not much left to it. I'm a bit sad to say.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, I think our 3 papers have always done a good job of being really hyper-local in those communities and either supporting events down there, running people's legals and their hiring advertisements, and then also, reporting on the news.
Yeah.
So, that we're able to, when we moved to online readership, it stayed really strong. I mean, we're still seeing hundreds of readers on, hundreds of thousands of readers on there every year. And so that's huge. And so if we can also give them a print product to look at, let's do it.
Yeah.
But the businesses and advertisers have to support it in order to make it work.
Yeah.
And so if they want to see a print paper, they got to be able to support and sort of help put the money where their mouth is.
And I mentioned off air, I'll give you this story after the news, but I get out to the Northeast Kingdom every couple of weeks, and when I'm out there, I'll grab the Newport paper and the St. Johnsbury paper, which is a Caledonian Record. Again, a daily paper, and again, so I'll just read the headline here. Facing financial strain, Caledonian Record to raise newsstand price on June 1, loss of ad revenue to big tech. The publisher kept going after big tech. Threatens local papers' 188-year run. And the publisher, Todd Smith, made it very clear, hey, if we don't start generating some more money, we may be gone. And that's a story that we've, gotten pretty used to.
Yeah,
maybe you have stats. I mean, how many hundreds of I think we're losing papers still every week and stuff.
Absolutely.
It's unreal.
The Center for Community News at UVM just put out an interesting report about the number of journalists that Vermont has and how that number has declined significantly, even in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to go. Next Friday is the Vermont Media Conference at UVM, and so they're bringing together newspaper people from across the state for a day of professional development and discussion.
Useful.
And this is the 3rd year, I believe, that they're doing it. And so I'm excited. I'm bringing my whole staff. We're going to show up in full force and represent this part of the state. And it should be a good time.
Interesting. I can go back to my radio days. I was on one-person news department when I think St. Albans had, a fairly decent radio station for a lot of years. But again, there are a bunch of, I was full-time radio news, also writing for the County Courier, my first paper, in the Free Press. But there were at that point, a bunch of even full-time radio news people. It's just unreal. We seem to be down to WDEV is hung in there very well, a very good station, and VMT to some extent, at least with the morning show. But more the media landscape. So anyway,
certainly different, but I think thriving in still a lot of ways. I mean, we've got great people doing the work, and any event you go to in St. Albans, I almost guarantee you I'll have somebody there covering it. And if we're not, then we'll take your photos and your captions and we'll publish them. I'm gladly take submissions from folks who want to spread their news.
Sounds good. And speaking of which, in fact, I don't go to many meetings these days, but And again, I should know, we're taping this show on Thursday, June 20th, with summer
Yes.
just a couple of hours away from officially checking in. I think Burlington has officially got a heat wave now with its third straight day of 90 or above. Anyway, but the Public Safety Forum, and to be honest, I try to, pay some attention to what's going on around here, but the concern about crime in St. Albans, until I saw, I think, a Messenger story or two, that wasn't on my radar too much. But again, boy, talk about a well-attended meeting, and Emerson Lynn doing his usual solid job kind of moderating it. But so this story's been around for a while. I mean, you've been picking up concern about this for a while, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I obviously work here in St. Albans during the day, and so I go downtown for lunch sometimes, and I don't think I see it in the way that maybe other people do who are here
And I certainly haven't
here in the
been.
evenings,
I'm
or who
here.
live downtown and have a different perspective. So I agree that it was like a little bit of a surprise in some ways.
Yeah.
But I also know, it's a surprise in some ways, but not in the others, because we know that Vermont's been dealing with a drug crisis for many years. I mean, only just in 2023 did we finally start to see a dip in some overdose deaths.
Yeah.
It had been climbing for many years before that. And so I think what the sentiment was, there were, of course, many topics discussed at the forum, but from the panelists who were there, lots of public safety officials who are sort of tasked with
Good, very
being an
solid
experts on those.
panel. I'm
Yeah,
glad,
agreed.
my good friend, former Judge Rainville, jumped in late.
Yeah, sure.
Got some good words, too. I think
Right.
You might see a legislative candidate in Greg Rainville down the road sometime.
Maybe. But their sort of point was that, a lot of the misdemeanor crimes that we're seeing, shoplifting,
Right.
theft from vehicles,
Yeah.
loitering, that a lot of that is coming from people's drug use. I mean, and the need to fund that addiction. And, sort of folks will do anything in order to get the cash they need to sustain that.
Yeah,
And
I've had one
until
of
we
my
can-
cars. Someone went through one of my cars, and I'm a long-time
sure.
St. Albans City resident. It was hard to lock it. I'm pretty good about locking stuff, but very hard to lock. But someone kind of rifled through that a while ago.
Oh, wow.
A little disconcerting. But
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
it sounds like the drug situation just hooks into this so much.
Yeah, sure, because then, it leads to crime as we're seeing now, but it also leads to this increase in our unhoused population,
Yeah.
people unable to hold down a job or be stable in that way.
Yeah. Boy. So anyway, but it was nice to see very, very good attendance at that
Sure,
meeting.
yeah. Over 100 or over 300 people.
Is that right? I was
Yeah.
guessing in
Yeah.
the old days I would have been trying to get a rough count, but I
Yeah,
was
sure.
probably
I had
guessing
asked
a good. Is
Chip
that right?
Sawyer at the city how many
Really?
chairs were set up, and he
Oh,
said
wow.
224.
Wow.
And then there were folks standing up in the back too. So I would say 300 is a pretty accurate number there.
Wow, on a hot night too. Although it
Sure.
actually was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool in there. But I was really impressed by the mix of people that were in there in terms of mix of ages. There was both young people, I think, who were my age, and also some older folks.
Yep, older people like me too. No, it was a good mix.
Yeah, and sure. And people who have lived in St. Albans a long time, and people who've just moved here.
Yeah.
So I think getting all of those perspectives was really nice, and everybody was civil and professional, and
Pretty much, with a couple of exceptions, but no,
Yeah.
it's a pretty civil dialogue.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, I was struck. Kathy Brannon's an old friend of mine, longtime teacher at SATEC, great person. She and her husband, Rusty, sell Maple products, top of the line folks. So I wonder what she's going to talk about. And she was one of the last speakers and mentioned the concern about the Northwest Farmers Market.
Right.
Boy, that kind of, because I'm at the market pretty much every Saturday, to hear there was concern and obviously
Sure.
broad daylight with a lot of people around, that was pretty disconcerting to me.
Right. I agree. And the woman who spoke on behalf of HARDAC as well, in terms of, she spends a lot of time there and
Right,
seeing.
just folks, some encampments, or like some people just kind of hanging out up in Aldous Hill Playground or Hardack.
Right.
Boy. So there were a couple of references. Tent City, I guess I don't think Tent City meant anything to me. Were you hip to Tent City, which I guess an encampment
Yes,
that is
that was
no longer...
Right. It was an encampment that was sort of behind Food City in the woods back there.
Wow,
That was cleared out recently.
interesting.
And so, those folks now have to find somewhere else to go. And, if folks are seeing people loitering around or hanging out, it's, perhaps because they don't have somewhere
Yeah.
else to go.
because I run into occasional, I'm used to it in Burlington, but panhandlers, even
sure.
by the post office, I'll get approached maybe once every couple of weeks from somebody.
Right.
But boy, the homeless, the unhoused issue, what a tough issue. I mean, in fact, there was maybe I read it in a Messenger story, but an estimated, I think, 3,500 homeless people in Vermont. That's the stat I saw the other day.
Yeah.
But I know when I did my interviews on the last November election, asking local legislators about that, getting a lot of kind of murky answers, but boy,
Right.
it still seems like a very tough issue to deal with.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the waiting list at Tim's house, the shelter here in St.
Yeah.
Albans, is long, and because folks are having to stay at the shelter for longer than they have in the past because there's no place for them to move into.
Yeah.
And so that's certainly a huge challenge.
Yeah, and housing. I thought your colleague Josh Yellowbrock, I just reread the story this morning. In fact, just a housing crisis in Vermont. Boy, what a tough. In fact, statewide, it was like I even heard 30 to 40,000 units are needed or something. I mean, good luck.
Right.
It sounds like St. Albans is faring probably a lot better than some places. I
Sure.
guess.
I mean, we do have some new apartment buildings going up in the city there.
Of course, the Lake Street project's what, about 70 units or so?
And then the one happening at the former Fonda site, the senior
Cathedral
complex
Square.
there, Cathedral Square. Yep.
Yeah.
Up in Highgate, there'll be one as well. So
In fact, I've actually got some new. I'm sure you might check. I've got actually some bad news about that, or potential bad news. And again, I'm not coming up with much, but I happened to interview Sharon Bousquet, the Highgate Town Administrator. I'm very high on Sharon, former Select Board Chair. I think she's doing a really good job. But in a recent interview here, and I think she said, Richard, you happen to be the first person hearing this, but boy, they may have because one of my questions was, are you all set to move ahead with the village core?
Right.
Components projects, most certainly including Cathedral Square's 30 units, which sounds like I don't know anybody who doesn't think that's a good idea. I mean, I think it sounds like a great thing for Highgate. So I said, do you need any more voter approvals? And she said, I'm afraid we do. The state is now telling us that we're going to have to put out a bond issue. And check this, this has been a little while, but I was so sad to hear this. I said, wow, that sure sounds to me like that might be a killer. And she was... It sounded pretty pessimistic, but it sounded like the state's going to require a bond issue with whatever the total price tag on the development. So that could be, I'm just throwing out a figure, but maybe like $5 million or so. But the problem is, and we're talking Australian ballot, so no more discussing and a vote. We're just, and I'm sure they'll do an info meeting or info meetings. You know how many people will show up for them. So people are going to, if this comes to a vote, they're going to see that that big figure and probably just freak out.
Sure, yeah.
And she said, and I think the state was telling Highgate, you need to do that vote by, I think, late summer or something.
Oh, wow.
And she said, we may not even know at that point how much outside money we're getting. So this just sounded to me like terrible news. Anyway, maybe things have changed. I hope so.
Right.
That certainly put a cloud to me over the Highgate initiative. But
sure.
Anyway,
I mean,
maybe
the
things,
state regulations like that one, and there's plenty others as well, could be causing some of the roadblocks among others as well.
But boy, housing. But anyway, St. Albans seems to be doing, and of course they've got big plans for right near City Hall, which would be the last TIF, the last tax increment financing initiative, I guess.
Yes. So, creative solutions happening there with public-private partnerships and things like that. We'll see how much it ricochets outward into other communities.
Yeah, of course, I'm always seeing stories about UVM in Burlington and kind of sad news. I guess Burlington or UVM had gotten together with the developer for hundreds of housing units for students, and that's gone away. I guess what the developer said, sorry, just the numbers don't make sense or something.
Yes, I
boy,
believe that's
not
the
a
case.
huge issue for, again, something you would be well aware of, but boy, just what a tough housing market down there.
Right.
Boy, a lot of issues out there. I just mentioned off here, I'm just struck by what a quiet election we have now. Not nationally. I don't even like to think about what's going on
but locally
nationally.
here,
I just can't believe. I told you in my almost half a century here, I've never seen anything so quiet. And thanks for your reporting on that, because I hadn't bothered to check that myself, because the deadline for major party candidates was May 30 to file. Although I guess independents still have some time. Maybe we'll see a few independent candidates. But still, 13-member legislative delegation, election, all the incumbents running for re-election,
Right.
and just 2 are being challenged.
Sure. Yep.
Casey Toof in the St. Albans Town and City, and Penny, my old friend, Penny DeMar over in Enosburg. And the 2 senators, Senators Norris and Brock, no competition at this point anyway.
No.
I'm just kind of blown away by that. Were you surprised at that, or?
I was surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, we know back in, I guess, the last election, the Democrats had put up some candidates, and it was close, but not incredibly.
Yeah.
And so, it'll be interesting to see the future of that party in this part of the state going forward,
Yeah.
and who's going to sort of step up. But you've got Zach Scheffler, who's stepping up there in Franklin 8.
He was, I guess, chair of the Franklin County Democratic Committee. I know Zach pretty well. He used to work out here. Yep, great guy. And Rep. Toof, I think, is a very well-regarded guy, but
Sure.
2 very solid candidates here.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting campaign.
I don't know the Democrat who's running against Penny DeMar in Enosburg,
Heather Moore.
Montgomery. Heather Moore.
Yes, she works in the school district.
Interesting.
Up
That
there.
sounds like
and
a solid candidate.
Yes. So there'll
Interesting.
be some interest there, absolutely.
As I happen to think about it, actually, there are folks in 2 Franklin County communities who will get a new state senator. No, Montgomery, and I think Richard is still in the Orleans Senate District, other side of the mountain, and Bobby Starr, the one, boy, the
Sure.
Senate's taking a real hit.
Yeah.
Deaths of Dick Mazza, a great guy. I didn't know him
Yes.
well. I love Dick Mazza. Dick Sears, I didn't know, but deaths of 2 kind of legendary senators.
Right.
And some other, and Senator Jane Kitchell, a key senator not running
Sure.
for election. Bobby Starr's been in the legislature forever. So anyway, folks in Montgomery and Richard will have a new state senator.
Right.
And I don't know the candidates, but Catherine Sims, Democratic state rep
Sure.
from Craftsbury, is the one Democrat running. And I think there are 2 Republicans running.
Okay.
Mr.
Yes.
Doug, anyway. Anyway, so.
And then down in the Chittenden North Senate
Oh,
District.
thanks for that. I
That's,
didn't even think of that, which hooks
current-
into Fairfax.
Yes,
Okay,
currently
Fairfax.
represented by Irene Renner.
Right.
And she's got a challenge in Chris Mattos from Milton.
Who's now a state rep in Milton.
Republican state rep in Milton,
Okay,
correct.
thanks. I didn't
Sure.
even actually think of
Sure,
that.
sure. And I do know the candidates who are running for Dick Mazza's seat on Grand Isle.
In fact, Andy Julo was
Yes.
appointed the Democrat to fill that seat.
Yep.
And I hear Chris Brennan, I guess, a state rep from
Yes, Pat
Colchester,
Brennan from
Republican.
Colchester.
I'm sorry,
That's
Pat,
okay.
Pat Brennan.
Yes.
Long time, I guess, House Transportation Committee chair. I hear him on radio once in a while.
Sure.
Anybody else in that race?
Yes, Julie Holbird, former Colchester Select Board member.
Okay.
And then she's been on a couple state commissions, the Cannabis Control Board, and
And running as a Rep or Dem?
as a Dem.
As a Dem. So we
Yes.
have Democratic primary.
There is. That's, yes,
Boy,
the
you
only
think-
one in our coverage area for me that I'll be
Interesting.
working
Oh,
on.
thanks for
but-
mentioning that.
Yeah.
Boy, I would think Andy Julo doesn't have the numbers in his favor. Sounds like a very solid guy, and now the incumbent for what that's worth. But
Right.
boy, Colchester's a place with the numbers. But interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of on a few Franklin County towns, we'll have a
Sure.
little more. But just what a quiet election.
Right.
Just really surprising to me. And statewide, we talked off air. Boy, Governor Phil Scott not having a good day this past Monday with the veto session. Just had one of his vetoes sustained. But boy, just the rhetoric. I mean, especially kind of by Vermont standards, getting pretty pointed, a
Sure.
bit harsh between the governor and the Democratic supermajority, the Speaker and the Senate President pro tem.
Right.
Just boy, and it looks like, again, I don't have a good handle statewide, but it sounds like Republicans didn't fare as well as they certainly hoped they would in finding Republican candidates for the legislature.
Sure.
So at quick glance, it sure sounds to me like the Demo supermajority will still be there.
Right.
And the governor certainly still going to be there. another tough race, I'm kidding, for the governor.
Sure. Sure.
Boy, but that's a kind of a disconcerting situation
Yeah,
to me.
absolutely. But as we get closer, of course, the Messenger will have coverage of all of it, of the
Right.
contested races and
Yeah.
and even the uncontested. I mean, this is a great time to check in with some of those folks who
Yeah.
don't have an opponent and
Yeah.
find out,
what they have to say.
what are they going to do this time around?
Yeah. No, I
'Cause
should do that
seat,
myself.
that seat's not guaranteed always.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of, obviously unfinished business this legislative session when
Yeah.
they're not going to go back until next January, which feels like a while away.
Yeah.
But, and there'll be a lot of there's issues that are unfinished and there'll be new ones that crop up between now and
Yeah.
then. And so, the housing crisis, like we just talked about,
Right.
drug use. so many different things, education.
Yeah, a lot of issues. And boy, the Republican Party in Vermont, again, we talk about the Democratic supermajority. Imagine the Republican Party without Franklin County.
Right.
We're talking, again, a 13-member delegation, 12
Sure.
of whom are Republicans. The only Democrat happens to be my state rep, Mike McCarthy,
Right.
in St. Albans City. So, I mean, really, imagine the Republican Party. It's Franklin County and maybe a few other spots, but boy, tough shape.
Yeah, absolutely.
What other we're down to about 2.5 minutes. Anything, any other messenger tidbits to throw at us? But glad you're hanging in there.
Yeah, sure thing. Messenger tidbits. I mean, I think we just came to to the end of a long run of busy weekends, I think,
Yeah.
here in St. Albans.
A lot of stuff going on already.
Yeah,
too.
a lot of different things going on. We had the first Pride weekend here in St.
I
Albans,
did
which
take
had a
some
great...
note. That was a much bigger event than I was I hadn't thought about it much, but I
Sure.
wandered around Taylor Park. But yeah, that was a pretty big event.
Yeah, good turnout. I think, lots of creative events and ideas and lots of fun color. And
Yeah.
that was really great to see, I think.
I'm afraid, boy, Juneteenth, and again, we're taping the show Thursday, June 20th.
Right.
Juneteenth would happen to be my mother's birthday. She would have been 108 yesterday. Didn't quite make it, but weather wasn't good. I was on Taylor Park and a number of booths set up, and at least when I was here, it was pretty rainy, so I'm sure the weather didn't help them, but they gave it a good
Right.
effort, I
They
think.
did, yeah. It had some food
Yeah.
and some speakers, and there was a group with a drum performance. So
Yeah.
there was also a Juneteenth event down in Fairfax at the community center down there
Oh,
that
yeah.
had good showing. Former Governor Douglas was there,
Oh, yeah.
Senator Irene Renner. So,
Huh.
yeah.
So in a lot of summer, I caught the first concert on Taylor Park last
Yes.
night. Actually, I thought pretty decent music. I didn't know the band. I thought they were pretty good.
Yeah, that's
But,
great.
And in fact, today, again, we're taping this show, but boy, I'm a little concerned about the Bay Farmers Market today. I'm not sure whether it's going to be
Tonight, yes.
but still every Thursday. But there's a lot of stuff going
New
on
bands
around
going
here.
on down there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And then this past weekend, we had graduations all across Franklin County, all
Right.
5 schools, and then also state championships in sports. It was a huge
Boy,
weekend for
Franklin
that.
County fared
We really
pretty well.
swept
huh?
the games, which
Yeah.
was really exciting, historic moment for
Yeah.
sure. Ruthie LaRoche, our sports editor, did an excellent job.
Ruthie
with
does,
that
and I love her hiking stories.
coverage.
She
Yeah,
does a
she
very
does.
good job.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, she was, is a big cheerleader for all of our teams, and
Wow.
so that was
Dan,
wonderful.
kind of a stupid question with 40 seconds left, but so you've been 4 years with the Messenger. Franklin County, does Franklin County seem to have changed much or not really? You got
In the
15 seconds.
Oh my goodness! In
Nice
the
of you.
time I've been here, I mean, yes, I think so. I've definitely seen
Seems like its reputation gets better. When I moved to St.
Yeah.
Albans decades ago, people
I would
couldn't believe
agree.
you're moving to St. Albans. It's been a pretty decent
no,
place.
I mean, there's been so many new businesses that I think have shown
Yeah.
up. Some of these new events.
Yeah.
I think the farmers market has gotten bigger.
Yeah.
I think there's new crops of young people moving here that are bringing ideas and things like that. So. I would certainly see some changes.
I
for
think
sure.
it's got some life to it. Anyway, on that positive note, very many thanks to Bridget Higdon,
Sure
the
thing.
managing editor of the Saint Albans Messenger. Hope to have Bridget back, and thanks to my man Josh Pryor, our producer. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. We appreciate you watching us here on Northwest Access TV. See you next time.